But I think the people are way ahead of the Congress. I think right now, I think we're getting some pretty strong information that people are way ahead of the Congress on this war. Not only on the drug war, but that other war that kills a lot of people as well. And very simply, I have a position that I believe is constitutional. I think it is common sense. I think it was built into the American tradition. And that is, we ought to mind our own business, and what we ought to do with Iraq is just come home. For all the money and all the lives lost and all the arguments and all the talk about oil and all the denial of lying, it boils down to, well, we can't do that because there'd be chaos if we left. Yeah, like there won't be chaos if we stay. The difference is the American boys and girls won't be killed over there if we do leave. And you know, there's a theory about the unintended consequences of our interventions, whether it's economic or foreign policy. Always things happen that they don't anticipate. And there's obviously a lot of unintended consequences of what's happening in Iraq. But I think there's another good theory about the unintended consequences when you leave. Things aren't nearly as bad as they think they're going to be. Just think about the tragedy of the 60s. I was called to military duty in 1963, ended up serving 5 years in the military. And all I ever heard through the 60s was, if we ever leave, there will be a domino effect. And the Soviets would take over the world, and that would be the end of the United States, and that sort of thing. So what do? We lose 60,000, probably a million Vietnamese were killed, and many French over that whole thing, lasting for 30 years. And finally, we said that this is not winnable. People don't like to be occupied by foreign powers, and they'll fight to the death for it. So we finally pack our bag and when we leave. Was it a disaster for the Far East? Did it all go communist? No, we win the Cold War, and what was the unintended consequence? They're one of our best trading partners now, which proves the point of the founders. And they said, don't get involved in the internal affairs of other nations. Don't be involved in entangling alliances. Mind our own business. Don't be a nation builder. Don't be the policeman of the world. Trade with people and talk to people and be diplomatic about it. And this proves that things work out much better. Those of us who argue the case that we should be doing a lot less are sometimes accused in a negative fashion of, oh, you're a bunch of isolationists. You want to be isolationists and not deal with the world. But the true libertarian position is far from isolationism. We're not mercantilists. We're not protectionists. We should trade and talk with people and get along with people. And yet, today, we have a system that I call diplomatic isolationism. Another unintended consequence is, yes, we're over there spreading our goodness, and you will accept it or we'll kill you. And that's been our policy. But what we've done is we have isolated ourselves from the world. We pretend to be a responsible member of the world community, which you can well do without world government. But really, we are diplomatically isolated, and we have become very isolationist because we don't talk to people, and we want to use our force on so many others. The solution to so many of our problems is ready available. All we have to do is read the Constitution. It's not a perfect document, but I think the concept of the rule of law is very, very important. So if you don't have some type of agreement and contract between the people and the government, you really have total anarchy. And yet the Constitution, even with its imperfection, it is even worse when we just ignore the Constitution. And that's what has happened. There's been essentially total rejection of the concept of the Constitution, whether it's the executive branch, the judicial branch, or the legislative branch. We just totally ignore it. One of the best examples of this that I use constantly is that serving on the International Relations Committee, when the resolution came up to give authority to the president to go to war, this resolution listed 2 reasons why we should do this for the president. And one was that Saddam Hussein was a threat to our national security. He was about to come over here and bomb us, and we had to do something about it. And the other thing is we had to enforce UN resolutions. And the whole thrust of that piece of legislation It was not a declaration of war. It was a transfer of power to allow the president to go to war at will. And just remember, for months and months before we went to war, it was so annoying to me, I haven't yet decided whether or not we're going to go to war or not. Well, it should be the people through the Congress that makes the decision on whether or not we go to war. And because I had a pretty good memory of World War II and Korea and Vietnam, and thought that it was so disastrous on the way we go to war as much as the case for the war, or whether we should do it or not. So when the resolution came to the committee, I insisted that they vote on a substitute resolution that I introduced, which says a declaration of war, an up or down vote on a declaration of war. And I assured them that I would not be voting for it, so if they don't want it to pass, they're going to have to defeat it, and they assured me they would defeat it. But the lecturing was the important part. The chairman of the committee lectured me and said, well, you don't understand, but that part of the Constitution is anachronistic. We don't deal with that constitutional declaration of war anymore. And then Lantos, who was the ranking member, accused me of participating in frivolous legislation, bringing up a subject like the Constitution. That's the type of respect that they have. Of course, that's the mess that we have. So whether it's foreign policy, the way we deal with foreign policy with lack of respect for the rule of law, whether it has to do with the entitlement system, whether it has to do with our tax code, it should be chopped along with the income tax and the IRS and the whole thing, but as well as the monetary system. As long as we have a monetary system like this, we will always allow government to grow in a very sinister way, because the inflation tax is the worst of all taxes, and it's the greatest burden is on the poor and the middle class, because wealth is transferred from the middle class to the very wealthy. And yet, that is one issue that not many people want to talk about. Today, before the newspaper, as we were walking out, one of the interviewers on the board said to one of the staff people who was with me, they said, you know what, I think that's the first time I've ever heard anybody bring up the Bretton Woods Agreement. Of course, that was very important to me, because it was the final severance of the link of gold to the currency that allowed the explosion of the growth of debt and government spending. So it's the fact that government grows, and they do tax way too much, they do borrow way too much, but they still don't have enough, so they want to be able to print the money too. And yet there's not very much interest in that issue. But I think if we want to solve our problems, we have to deal in a whole range of things. We have to talk about what the role of government ought to be. And in foreign policy, the role of government should be very limited. That is, mind our own business and provide for a strong national defense and bring our troops home. I don't think it's much more complicated than that. Personal liberty, it's very simple. The government does not own us. And if they can tell us what we can smoke and drink and what vitamins we can take or can't take, that means that they own us and that they own our bodies. And if they own our bodies and tell us what we can do, and that all risk decision-making is made by the government, not by us as individuals or by our family, it means that the government then can regulate what we take into our minds as well as into our souls. And ultimately, this is the type of government that we're moving to. So the government owns us. That's why we still have a selective service with a potential draft coming back. At the same time, they assume that they own all your income, and they allow us to keep a certain percentage. It also means that they will regulate and want to regulate the internet, deciding to be seen or not seen on the internet. So I'm a strong proponent, not that I endorse what occurs always on the internet or what private individuals do, but that's not my decision. My position politically is to allow those decisions to be made by individuals, and that the choices be made in a much different manner than bureaucrats and authoritarians coming and telling us what we can do or can't do. This is the reason that when they did a survey on those who voted to protect or not protect the internet, I was very proud of the fact that I came out with the highest rating of protecting the internet. And of course, that is very important in a campaign like this.